Title card, Eleanor Roosevelt, close to home. Val-Kill cottage in autumn foliage. Val-Kill cottage interiors.
Do not stop thinking of life as an adventure. You have no security unless you can live bravely, excitingly, imaginatively. Life was meant to be lived and curiosity to be kept alive. One must never, for whatever reason, turn his back on life.
Eleanor Roosevelt speaking to crowds of people.
Eleanor Roosevelt's life was full of passion and purpose. Journalist, diplomat, and activist, she revolutionized the role of First Lady and became a force in the Democratic Party.
We cannot tell from day to day what may come. This is no ordinary time. No time for weighing anything except what we can best do for the country as a whole.
Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt.
When Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt entered the White House in 1933, millions of Americans were unemployed. Hundreds of thousands roamed the country in search of food, shelter, and work.
People in Hoovervilles, unemployment lines, and soup lines.
I believe you should tell the story of injustices, of inequalities, of bad conditions, so that the people as a whole in this country really face the problems.
Eleanor campaigning and traveling across USA.
Eleanor Roosevelt was determined to make a difference in the lives of Americans. She had no interest in staying at home in the White House.
My husband knew very well that if I just did the social entertaining, it would be almost unbearable. And so he let me do the things that allowed me to see what was going on in the different programs.
In 1 year alone, she traveled 40,000 miles. It was headline news when she stayed in the White House.
I'm sorry, but I have to know.
Eleanor Roosevelt went everywhere, visiting working people across the country. On one famous occasion, she insisted on going down inside a coal mine. Soon afterwards, a cartoon appeared depicting two miners looking up in surprise at the sudden arrival of Mrs. Roosevelt.
I was doing things that had not been done before. It was indicated to me that I should feel somewhat ashamed of that cartoon, and there certainly was something the matter with a woman who wanted to see so much and to know so much.
Eleanor writing.
From 1936 until a few months before her death in 1962, Eleanor Roosevelt wrote her daily column, My Day. She published more than 7,000 of them in nearly 200 newspapers, reaching millions of American households.
The caption reads, "But it would make such a nice scoop if you would only tell me, Franklin." It was very amusing because Franklin never told me anything.
Young Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt.
Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt both came from prominent New York families. As a young woman, she was very different from the other debutantes Franklin knew. Shy and serious, she volunteered to teach in a settlement house on the Lower East Side.
Children working in sweatshops.
I was being educated, and I saw little children who worked hours on end until they fell off the benches. This was all completely new to me. My first introduction to conditions of labor.
Child Eleanor and her family.
Eleanor's compassion for others stemmed from her own childhood, which she described as a series of losses. Her mother died of diphtheria when Eleanor was 8. Her beloved father died a year later. She was raised by her strict and distant grandmother until she was sent off to the Allenswood School in England.
Teenage Eleanor.
There, she discovered her own intellectual curiosity and a new confidence in herself.
Young Franklin.
Dear Mama, I am the happiest man in the world, Franklin wrote to his mother. As different as they were, Eleanor and Franklin found in each other kindred spirits
Franklin and Eleanor courtship, marriage, and family.
Their whirlwind courtship and marriage surprised their friends and family, especially his mother, the formidable Sarah Delano Roosevelt. For the next 15 years, as they raised their 5 children, they lived in houses belonging to Sarah. Eleanor was a dutiful wife and daughter-in-law until she discovered her husband's infidelity.
Eleanor driving at Val-Kill.
While she agreed to stay in the marriage, she began to assert her own independence. She developed close friendships with women who were active in politics.
Scenes of Val-Kill.
In 1924, FDR suggested that they build a cottage a few miles from Sarah's house. They named it Val-Kill, after a little stream where they loved to picnic.
Roosevelt at Val-Kill.
Val-Kill became a retreat, a place that Eleanor could call her own. Over the years, family and friends would come here to swim, relax, discuss politics, and laugh. In 1926, Eleanor and her friends built a factory next to the cottage.
New Deal program workers.
They invited local farmers to learn furniture making and other skills that would help them survive economically. They named the experiment Val-Kill Industries. During the Depression, many of FDR's New Deal programs had similar goals. One of these was Arthurdale, a model community in West Virginia built with Eleanor's support.
Eleanor dancing.
Franklin and I had a desire to see improvements for people. I knew about social conditions, perhaps more than he did, but he knew about government and how you could use government to improve certain things.
The Roosevelts campaigning.
And I think we began to get an understanding of teamwork.
In her role as First Lady, many have said she became his conscience.
I have access to the president, and if I don't use that access to do things that need to be done in this country, I would be sorely remiss and irresponsible. I'm the agitator. He's the politician.
Eleanor Roosevelt spoke out publicly about important issues. Her views on segregation alienated many Americans, especially in the South.
I remember very well on the anti-lynching bill. He said he could not make that bill a must because he had to have the Southern vote in case he had to meet a war. I said I feel very strongly that the anti-lynching bill should pass. He said, I didn't say that you had to take any special stand. You do what you think is right. On another occasion, he said, I can always say I can't do anything with my wife.
Eleanor and Franklin's political partnership spanned 35 years, 12 of them in the White House. She was by Franklin's side as he led the country out of the Depression and into the Second World War. All 4 of their sons enlisted and risked their lives overseas. In April 1945, just a few weeks before Germany surrendered and the war in Europe ended, Franklin Roosevelt died.
FDR's funeral and mourners.
Their marriage had endured many trials, including his long battle with polio. Now, their partnership had come to an end. Eleanor told reporters, "The story is over."
President Truman and Eleanor speaking.
8 months later, President Truman asked her to represent America at the first meeting of the United Nations, helping to fulfill her husband's dream. In Europe, she saw the destruction of the war, the bombed-out cities, the ruined lives of displaced people.
War-torn Europe in ruins.
My visit was so packed full of emotions, it is hard to give you an adequate idea of what I saw or felt. When will our consciences grow so tender that we will act to prevent human misery rather than avenge it?
United Nations General Assembly.
Eleanor Roosevelt had great hopes that the United Nations would be an instrument for world peace.
I knew that as the only woman, I'd better be better than anybody else. I really had better do all my homework. So I read every paper, and they were very dull sometimes, but I did read them all.
At the end of the first session, she was unanimously chosen to chair a committee to draft the Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
Eleanor at the UN.
It took 2 years to persuade the contentious group of delegates to agree on the document.
Man's desire for peace lies behind this declaration. The realization that the flagrant violation of human rights by Nazi and
At 3 o'clock in the morning on December 10, 1948, the General Assembly overwhelmingly approved the declaration. She considered it the most important achievement of her life.
Where, after all, do universal human rights begin? In small places, close to home. So close and so small that they cannot be seen on any map of the world.
Eleanor and visitors.
At Val-Kill, she put her beliefs into practice.
I had the first of the picnics for the Wiltwick School for Boys the other day, and I have never realized so keenly before how perfectly free from self-consciousness children can be, if nobody reminds them that there are any differences in color or race.
U.S. race riots.
In 1957, the eyes of the world turned to Little Rock, Arkansas. Federal troops were called in to protect black students whose lives were threatened as they tried to integrate the high school.
This was the kind of thing the Nazis had done to the Jews of Germany, and there also as a misguided effort to demonstrate their race superiority.
What can we do about this? It's a big question.
Face it, and realize that we can't afford to have two kinds of citizens. We must have equal citizenship for anybody in our country.
Eleanor speaking.
Eleanor Roosevelt was willing to risk her life for her convictions. In 1958, the Ku Klux Klan placed a $25,000 bounty on her head. She was scheduled to lead a workshop on civil disobedience in the mountains of Tennessee. The FBI warned that they could not protect her. Undaunted, she drove through dark, winding mountain roads, past burning crosses and armed Klansmen.
KKK burning crosses.
Courage is more exhilarating than fear, and in the long run, it is easier. We do not have to become heroes overnight, just a step at a time.
Throughout the 1950s, Eleanor Roosevelt was an international ambassador for peace.
Eleanor campaigning.
While she traveled around the world, Val-Kill remained her refuge.
Val-Kill in winter.
She had transformed the factory building into a comfortable cottage, the only home she ever owned.
There is something about the serenity and beauty of a countryside in winter. The murmur of the brook under the ice, the new and untouched snowfall. All of those things are joys which only the country can provide.
When she was at home in Val-Kill, the world came to her. She was the most powerful woman in America.
Eleanor and JFK.
In 1960, Senator John F. Kennedy came to Val-Kill, hoping to win her endorsement for the presidency. During a tense meeting, she finally agreed, on the condition that he take a stronger stand on civil rights.
Eleanor traveling.
In the last year of her life, she traveled to Israel for the 4th time in her efforts to bring peace to the Middle East.
One thing I believe profoundly: we make our own history. Surely, in the light of history, it is more intelligent to hope rather than to fear, to try rather than not to try. For one thing we know beyond all doubt: nothing has ever been achieved by the person who says, It can't be done.
Scenes of Val-Kill Cottage, rolling film credits.